As you know, the second Sunday of every month is our Inspiration Sunday. And it's a time when we invite people to come in to talk to us. You could be from the church or from outside the church. Today we have someone who is referred to as the Long Island Biblical Coach. I like that title. Amen. Or Biblical Health Coach. The Long Island Biblical Health Coach. And he's here with his team, Jody and Bessie. God bless you. Let's put our hands together for them. And I met Dr. Ray Omid. Dr. Ray is what we call him. I met him a few probably weeks ago. I think it was last year, the end of the year. And he invited me to a seminar. We went to the seminar. Actually, it was a dinner. So we went, we ate for free, Mr. Patrick and I. And the food was good too. And then he talked to us about something that he's going to talk to you about today. And I think that what he talked to us about was so important that it's important for the church to listen. I want you to put your hands together as we invite Dr. Ray Omid to come and speak to us today.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. What an honor and privilege to be here today. What an amazing service with beautiful music. Opens up the heart and gets you connected to the truth of God and Jesus, and just uplifts and empowers. And you know, everything that I do, I seek to make a difference in people's lives when it comes to health, because growing up as a child, I was exposed to an environment that was so medical based that by the time my dad was 60 years old, he was taking 15 different medications. He had diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, gout, arthritis, pain in his back, pain in his neck. I watched him go through 2 strokes, 3 forms of cancer, and all I kept asking is that if God created him to be healthy, why was he so sick? And I got my answer because one day I had an opportunity to meet his oncologist, and I sat down with him and I asked him a very important question. I want you to know that the way to health is through knowledge and understanding, and the way to sickness or disease is a lack of knowledge. Yeah? So I sat down with the oncologist and I asked him, I said, you know, why did my dad get cancer? I mean, he did everything you told him to do. He took all the medical recommendations. He's taken the medicine. How did he develop cancer? And I'll never forget the response. The oncologist looked at me and he said, you know, we don't really know why he got cancer. I said, what do you mean you don't know? See, I was trained to believe that the medical doctor knew all the answers. And so when I asked him, I said, well, what do you do then? He said, well, we treat the cancer once it's there. I said, but if you treat it and you don't find the cause, won't it return? And he said, we hope not. And I remember leaving that oncologist appointment with my father that day. And you see, I'm the youngest of 4 kids. And something was placed in my, God put something in my heart to find out answers to help my father. That was put in my heart. And I left that oncologist meeting saying, you know, where do you learn how to help people get healthy? Because medical doctor's job is to manage the sickness, but where do you learn how to get people healthy? And I'll never forget, I went home and I started looking online and looking into alternative healthcare and holistic healthcare. I never heard of anything like that. I was raised in such a medical household. I remember growing up, I had my own medicine cabinet. I had every flavor Robitussin in there. I had Advil, Tylenol, antibiotics, all the different things. So I didn't know anything about holistic healthcare, but I seeked interest in it. And what ended up happening is my dad that had cancer, his cancer came back. And I remember when it came back, I went back to the oncologist and I said, look, I said, you know, you gave him the chemo and the radiation. It put the cancer in remission, but it came back. I said, you know, how come you guys don't look at how to help him build his health? How come you don't teach him how to eat right? How come you don't teach him how to exercise? How come you don't teach him how to manage the stress? See, my dad had so much stress in his life, but nobody ever taught him how to manage any of that. And I watched what it did to him. And I'll never forget the oncologist's response was this. He said, son, our job as a medical doctor is to manage the disease, not help the person build their health. He said, that is not our job. So then I said, well, whose job is it? And he said, I don't know, but it's not ours. And you see, that was the point in which I decided to dedicate my life toward helping my family, my friends, and everybody I could tell I decided to dedicate my life to teaching them how to get healthy. So I decided to pack my stuff. I went to school in Atlanta, Georgia. There was one school, it was a graduate school, and it was known as Life University. And it was all about the understanding of the principles of health and healing. And I wanted to learn the laws that God gave us to govern health. I wanted to learn how to help people get healthy. I wanted to learn what the laws were, what the principles were to health. So I went to school, and not only did I sit through classes, but I went to as many seminars as I could go to learn about nutrition and herbs and eating right and whole foods and acupuncture and different forms of chiropractic and biofeedback, all the different available tools that were out there. And what happened is I graduated school and I moved back home in hopes to help my father. And right about the time I got back, I got a phone call from my mother, and she said, Dad's in the emergency room. She said that he hadn't had a bowel movement for 2 weeks. He hadn't gone to the bathroom for 2 weeks. And they kept giving him all sorts of laxatives, but nothing was working. So he went to the emergency room, and they couldn't find out what was going on with a CAT scan or an MRI, so they decided to cut his stomach open with a knife. And they found that the cancer that was once in his prostate had spread all over his large intestine and colon. It was so bad that they gave him a colostomy bag to go to the bathroom. He couldn't go to the bathroom anymore on his own. And they gave him 3 weeks to live. Now, I met that oncologist that day in the emergency room, and I'll never forget the interaction. See, because I just graduated school, I was so excited because I learned tools that would help his body get healthy. And I met the oncologist, and he said, son, he said, your dad has 3 weeks to live. He said, there's nothing we can do. There's no more chemo. There's no radiation. There's no surgery. Your dad is going to die. And I looked at him and I said, well, if there's nothing you're going to do, is it okay if I utilize the techniques and the tools that I learned in school? And he looked at me and he said, son, he said, you could do whatever you want, but nothing's going to work. I said, thank you for the vote of confidence. And I went into the emergency room, and on that day, my dad was hooked up to more tubes than I've ever seen. He could barely speak out of his mouth. He had a colostomy bag to go to the bathroom, and all I kept thinking is I hope to God that what I learned was right, because my dad's life was on the line. See, my dad was my first patient. And the last person you want to see as the first patient is somebody who you love with stage 4 cancer given 3 weeks to live. But I'll tell you that what we did that day and what I continue to do with him was unlock the potential to heal that lies in each and every person on this planet. That your body was created by God to heal. Your body was created to heal itself. Your body was created to be healthy. And see, I was trained on identifying where the factors were that were interfering with the healing power that God put in him. And as we unlocked that power and I started making changes to what they were feeding my father, because I recognized that Jell-O with sugar is definitely not what you want to be eating. It's not the most nutritious meal, that's for sure. But more than that, the sugar feeds cancer. So I said we got to cut out all the sugar. We got to change his eating to what's called ketogenic eating and a high-fat diet that's going to help his body get better. In fact, I put him on listen closely, I put him on fasting. Because when your body fasts, it goes into a mechanism where it kills off cancer cells. See, nobody ever explained to them that. Nobody ever explained to him something called autophagy, which is a state when your body kills cancer cells from within and uses those cells as a fuel source rather than using food as fuel. So I put him through this program. I unlocked the potential. Now, I didn't know how it was going to work. I didn't know what it was going to do, but I knew that it was going to be better than doing what? Nothing. So the most amazing thing happened is within a period of a week, he was in the emergency room at North Shore University, and what happened is his vital signs, his blood pressure and heart rate started stabilizing, and they were able to move him into a regular hospital bed. And I'd go in there every single night working on my father, unlocking the potential for him to heal from within. There's a big difference between understanding that what healed him was God's power within and saying that I healed him, which I did not do. The power to heal lies within each of us, and it comes from God. It does not come from people. But I want you to know something, that what happened is I continued to work on my father. And in a period of 2 weeks, they were able to release him. They didn't know what to do with him in the hospital. They released him and put him into a rehabilitation center. And within a period of 3 weeks later, see, he was supposed to be dead. It was 5 weeks into his death sentence. And in the rehabilitation center, he was getting up and moving around. They didn't know what to do with him there. He didn't need any sort of rehabilitation. So they released my father, and I'll never forget, it was Thanksgiving. And we had a whole family over, and he was sitting in the living room. And I remember looking at him and saying, you know, he looks healthier now than all that time doing all those medications. Because rather than treating his disease, we focused on building his health by removing the things that interfered with it and giving him the right nutrients necessary to heal. And I remember thinking that this is what I am to dedicate my life to, because I recognize that more important than the quantity of your life is the quality of your life. And how can you improve quality if you're not focused on building? And so the most amazing thing happened is I continued to work on my father, and he kept going back for exams. I remember my dad went back to work. My dad was an electronic distributor, so he would distribute electronics to retail stores all in the Brooklyn and Bronx, and he would be carrying boxes. This is somebody who was supposed to be dead. Carrying boxes in and out of a van and distributing to people. Every time my father went back for another exam, the cancer kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller, until 1 year after they said he was supposed to be dead, his cancer was completely gone. Thank you. See, all the years I've been in practice, and I've been in practice now 15 years, and we've helped thousands of people get well, not just cancer patients, but people with pain in their body, people with high blood pressure, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, autism, ADHD, all these years of helping these people get well, I've never once taken credit for healing. Because I know that it's God that does the healing. I know that each of us have a power put inside of us by God that allows us to heal. But that power can be interfered with by certain variables. And that interference can be corrected, thus allowing the body to heal itself again. But there are so many people suffering needlessly because nobody's ever taken the time to explain to them what is it that interferes with the power that heals the body and how to support the body right. And so you see, the human body is designed to live 80 to 120 years of quality health. But my question to you is, how are we doing in this country? If we were to pull 1,000 Americans, medical research shows that only 1 out of every 1,000 makes it to age 60 in good health. I'm not even talking about 70 years. They don't even make it to age 60 in good health. And you know, the crazy thing is that we consume more medicine than any country on the planet. 80% of all the medication produced in the world is consumed on this country, and we're only 5% of the population. So we're this little country taking in all this massive medication with the idea that it's going to get us healthy. Now, if medicine was going to get us healthy, we'd be the healthiest country in the world. I mean, 80% of all the medication is produced here. We have the most hospitals, the best medical doctors. We spend the most in medical care. But the World Health Organization recently did a study. They took 37 different countries, and they ranked the overall health of each one of these countries. Now, we have the most medicine being used. We have the most doctors. We spend the most in medical care. But out of 37 countries, where do you think we were ranked for overall health? Do you think we came in at the top or the bottom? Dead last. 37 out of 37 countries. You know we're number 1 for all the wrong reasons. We came in number 1 for cancer. We have the most amount of heart attacks, most amount of mental disorders, most amount of childhood diseases, most amount of what they call years of potential life lost. That means if you're designed to live till 80 or 90, you have the least likely chance to get there in this model. And you know, I thought about that because we consume more and more medicine. We have more medicine now than we've ever had before. And these numbers on these conditions are not going down, they're going up. We have more cancer now than we've ever had throughout U.S. history. We have more heart disease. 15 million kids are on Ritalin. It's a class 2 narcotic. Same class drug as cocaine. We put 15 million kids on cocaine. Autism is now get this, in 1960, the chances of having an autistic child was 1 in every 100,000. It's currently 1 out of every 68. And the science shows that if the trend continues, it's going to be 1 out of every 3 by the year 2050. So we got to begin to look at that and ask ourselves, why is it that in a country that has so much resources and abundance and everything medical, why are so many people sick? And the answer is very simple. The answer is that we don't have a healthcare model. What we have is a sick care model. We wait for people to get sick, and then we tell them how to manage their sickness. Now I'm here to do something different with you. I'm here to teach you true healthcare. I'm here to tell you where health comes from, what interferes with it, and how you can get it back. So if you're sitting in this room and you have some sort of pain somewhere in your body, whether it's a back problem or a neck problem or a headache or high blood pressure or diabetes, you're going to leave here with answers today. You're going to leave here knowing what to do, how to get better, and how to get yourself expressing 100% of the God-given health potential that lies in you. Because it lies in each of you. Each of you are designed to be healthy, but there are factors that can interfere. And so if we're going to help you build your health, the first thing that we have to do is take the time to explain to you what health is. So what is health? If I was to ask 100 people, you'd get 100 different definitions. In fact, the majority of people base their health on what? How they feel. So what's the problem with that? The problem is that there are certain factors that you don't feel happening in your body. For example, you can have plaquing forming in your arteries and have no idea. The number one leading cause of death in this country is heart attacks. You know, 1 out of 2 people that die in this country die of a heart attack, and 80% of the people that die of a heart attack don't feel a thing. They don't even know anything's wrong. But when they do autopsy reports, they find out the person had all this plaquing in their artery that had been developing for years. Because when was the last time you heard somebody say, I feel more plaquing in my arteries today? Has anyone ever heard anybody say that? You don't feel plaquing in your arteries. You don't feel cancer cells forming. You don't feel diabetes. You don't feel high blood pressure. You don't feel these things happening. So how you feel is a very poor indicator. Yet some people say, well, doc, that's why I eat right, and that's why I exercise. Because they were taught that if they eat right and exercise, that they'd be healthy. But you see, I had a friend who was Mr. Olympia. This guy had more muscles than I knew existed. And I'll never forget, a month after he won the competition, he went in for a blood check, and what they told him, his name's Chris, and they said, Chris, we're sorry to tell you, but you have ulcers all over your intestines, and it's causing major problems. And Chris looked at the doctor and said, Doc, you must be kidding me. He said, look at how I look. He said, I eat right, I exercise, and sure, I feel good. He said, so I don't believe you. And the doctor turned around and said this to him. He said, Chris, I want you to understand that when it comes to health, your health is much more than just about how much you're exercising or what you're eating. In fact, the number one cause of disease is not how much you exercise or what you eat, but it is stress. And Chris said, well, I'm not stressed. And the doctor said to him, listen to me, Chris. He said, when you're under stress, your brain goes into what we call a fight or flight response and releases cortisol, which caused ulcers in your intestines. And Chris left that hospital that day completely rethinking what health is. And I want you to rethink what health is, because most of us have been taught that health is about how you feel, how much you eat, what you exercise, and I want you to know it's about much more than that. In fact, most people say, well, doc, that's why I go in for a blood test. And the blood test told me that I was healthy. And, you know, a blood test doesn't even measure your health. A blood test measures if there's a full-blown disease. And you don't go from perfect health to full-blown disease overnight. Your body can be breaking down for years without any evidence of it. So how things show up in the blood is in the what? Early or late stages? Late. So we don't want to wait for that neither, right? Who wants to wait for cancer to appear if there was a way to prevent it? Who wants to wait for a heart attack or Alzheimer's if there was a way to prevent it? See, I want you to understand that prevention is about getting your body working the way God intended it to. Because your body is designed to be healthy. But in order for us to measure that, we have to measure what controls it. And so in science, they define health not as a state of feeling, but as a state of what they call function. And in order for you to be 100% healthy, you need your body functioning at what percent is 100%. And when your body was first created, God put one organ in your head in charge of all that. What's the one organ in the head that controls the function in the body? Now, here's what I want you to know about what's inside your brain. This is important. God put inside your brain a magnificent intelligence. We call it in our office God's power. We also call it life, because without that, there is none. And, you know, the way that it's designed is very simple. You see, they say in science that when a sperm and egg first come together, there's what they call a spark of life. That's what they give. The name is life. They just go, there's just life out of nowhere. And then they say 15 days after conception, the first part of your body to be developed is this one organ in the head called the brain. But the story doesn't end there. You see, the second part of your body to be developed is an extension of your brain. It goes from the top of your spine down the middle to the bottom, and they refer to that as the spinal cord, also known as your lifeline. And the third part of your body to be developed are the branches that come off of the spinal cord called nerves going to each and every part of your body. And by the way, you have 12 miles of nerves. So if anybody ever says you have a lot of nerve, you do. But I want you to know something really important. You see, in order for your heart to work right, in order for it to beat, or your lungs to breathe, or your stomach to digest, or your knees to do well, God's power in your brain is going to send signals in the form of electricity down the main spinal cord through the nerves to each and every part. I want you to know how amazing God's power in you is. In fact, every minute it sends 640 million messages to your body. Every minute, 640 million messages are going to your body. And it's telling your heart how to beat, your lungs how to breathe, your stomach how to digest food. It's when you eat pasta or bread, your body's sending messages to your pancreas to produce an enzyme called amylase. When you eat protein, it tells your stomach to make acid. When you go into cold weather, what does it do? What is your body going to do when you're in cold weather to get you warm? It's going to shiver. And when you're in hot weather, what does it do? Sweat. And it makes all the chemicals that you can imagine to kill off any microbe. In fact, sometimes when people get sick, they look for antibiotics, but they forget that their body makes their own antibiotics, and they're called antibodies. And I want you to know that most of the time when a pharmaceutical company makes a chemical in a laboratory, they're trying to duplicate what your body does naturally. Now, I'm going to give you an example with my father and cancer. You see, there's a chemical called interferon, and there's another one called interleukin. And what they do is they kill cancer cells. And God's power in your brain sends signals to your immune system to make them as needed, as long as the signals aren't being interfered with. But what happens in laboratories is a medical man comes along and says, you know, we can duplicate this thing and sell it back to people whose body isn't making it. So they make interferons and interleukins in a laboratory. The only problem is, who's going to make it better, God or man? God, yes. So man comes with error, right? And they call those errors, when you're trying to make medication, what do they call those? Side effects. And I don't call them unwanted effects, because if they're unwanted, you probably wouldn't take them. In fact, have you ever watched those commercials on TV, and it's a antidepressant? It says some of the side effects include wanting to kill yourself, wanting to kill others, bleeding when you stand up, and, you know, your rectum will fall out your butt, and you're like, well, maybe, you know, maybe I'd rather just be depressed, you know? But what happens is, if you call them side effects, it's almost like that doesn't exist. Like, oh, that's just on the side. That's not for me. But I want you to know those are man-made errors. You know, when they make a chemical, they try to do it like God did, but you can't come anywhere close. So it comes with errors, and those are called side effects, meaning these are the effects. We don't really know. We give you this drug, and you can have any one of these 32 side effects. We don't know. You might get none. You might get some. We don't really know. See, I'd rather put my faith and confidence in the chemicals that God made. Now, I know as long as my body's making the chemicals that God made inside of me, that it's going to work the way it's designed to. I also know that something can interfere with it. And so I want you to understand that over the course of time, your body is going to make all the chemicals that you need. You're going to make chemicals to feel good. You're going to make chemicals to sleep. You're going to make chemicals to get energy. You're going to make chemicals to be in good moods. You're going to make everything you need. This system that we're talking about has within it God's power that knows how to make those chemicals. And when your body doesn't make chemicals, what they do medically is they try to substitute what you're not making with a synthetic one. That just doesn't work as well, though. You see, I want you to know that antibodies, the ones God created in you, are way more powerful than antibiotics. Because antibodies can fight off viruses, bacteria, fungus, yeast, everything, while antibiotics can only fight off bacteria. So if the body's not making enough of that, we got to look at why it's not. But I want to go back to something really important. See, God's power is going to flow down the spinal cord through the nerves. Now, suppose there was an interference to that system. For example, if the nerve going to your heart was completely cut, and there was no more God's power, no more life, no more healing or health getting to the heart, without that signal getting to the heart, without signals and life flowing to the heart, what would happen to the heart? It would die. What I want you to understand, and listen closely, is that the spine, and I'm going to explain this to you so you can see it visually, but I want you to know that the spine can shift out of way in such a way that it squeezes down on the nerve and it disrupts the signals going from your brain to that body part. So let's say, for example, the nerve going to your heart was just squeezed enough so that only half of the messages were getting through. What would happen to the heart? Would it work the way that God intended it to, or would it break down? Break down. And you see, the key is that can be happening for years without any sort of evidence whatsoever. But the longer it goes on, eventually it crosses a tipping point where now there's evidence on a CAT scan or an MRI. And when it crosses that tipping point where there's evidence, science refers to that as a disease. You got it. So, see, I want you to understand something, that in order for you to be healthy, you need to make sure what percentage of that power in life is flowing freely into your body. What percentage of it? 100%. And so you see, when your body was first created, God surrounded your entire nerve system with bone to protect it. So what protects your brain is the skull, and the spinal cord and nerves are so important. They too are protected by bone, which is called your spine. So what I'd like to do is show you what I mean by that. This is a model of your spine. Okay, now your brain is protected by the skull, which is the top. Inside the middle of your spine runs something called the spinal cord. Spinal cord goes from the top of your spine down the middle of your spine to the bottom, and then out the side you have nerves that go to each and every part of your body. Now, as long as your spine is in proper position, it's like a conduit. Life and power can flow freely. But what can happen to your spine is that you could bang it out of position, and if your spine bangs out of position, it chokes on the nerve that's transmitting life to a part of the body. So let's talk about what would cause a perfectly normal spine to bang out of position like that. It could be some sort of accident or injury, trauma to the spine, or it could be some day-to-day things. What are some day-to-day stresses on the spine? Sitting too long. What else? Lifting heavy objects the wrong way. Standing too long. Bad posture. Facebook. All of these stresses. Now, you know the number one thing that causes your spine to shift out of its normal alignment is actually emotional stress. Because when you're under stress, what happens to your muscles? Do they get relaxed or tight? You got it. When they get tight, guess what happens is that they shift the spine out of position. But I want to talk about one part that's the most important that you need to know about. The top part of your spinal cord is known as your brainstem. The reason why it's the most important is that everything going from your brain to your body is going to pass through there. And everything going from your body to your brain is going to pass through there too. The brainstem is so important that it has its own name. It's the top part of your spinal cord, but they call it the brainstem. Now, you see, the brainstem controls blood pressure. It controls blood sugar. It controls cholesterol. So the first bone in the spine, therefore, is the most important because it protects that area. But if you've been exposed to fall or an accident or an injury, that bone can shift out of position, and as it does so, it could choke on the brainstem, cutting off life from the brain to the rest of the body. And if that first bone is out of position, squeezing on the brainstem, and life can't get through, what part of the body can be affected by that? Everything. You got it absolutely right. So when somebody comes in with blood pressure problems, we check the C1 bone to see if it's in position or if it's out, choking on the brainstem. Because the brainstem controls blood pressure. Now, you see, the thing is, if somebody has a blood pressure problem and they go to the medical doctor doesn't look for that. What is he going to do instead? He's going to give you a drug. Because it's high, he's going to give you a drug to bring it down, and that can remain. So all of a sudden, the person with the blood pressure now all of a sudden gets blood sugar problems, diabetes. Because the same area controls their blood sugar. So now they got blood sugar problems. They go to the doctor gives them a drug for the blood pressure, another drug for the blood sugar. But you see, it also controls their cholesterol. So all of a sudden now they get high cholesterol. So they take one drug for the blood sugar, one drug for the blood pressure, one drug for the diabetes. Then all of a sudden their stomach starts bothering them because it also controls the stomach acid level. So then they take Pepto-Bismol for the acid problem. They got the diabetes for the blood sugar. They got the high blood pressure medication. But you see, the brainstem also controls all the chemicals in the brain. And when somebody has anxiety or depression, we refer to that as a chemical what? Balance or imbalance? So all of a sudden, the person gets anxiety. They go back to the doctor. The doctor gives them Valium for the anxiety. Then they get depression, which is another chemical what? Imbalance. So now we give them another medication for the depression, an SSRI drug like Prozac. They take Prozac for that. Now they got sleep problems because their body's not making enough melatonin. All of these things are controlled by that area. So I want you to understand that the spine is the conduit through which God's power is expressed in your body. Just like in a house, the most important wires, they run through pipes called conduits. The conduit protects the wires so that electricity could flow properly. In your body, God put a conduit to protect your wires called your spine. And if it's in position, God's power will flow. But if it's out of position in any which way, it starts to cut off or compromise God's power from getting from the brain to the body, thus allowing the body to create itself sick. Now, you see, with my dad, what I have to share with you is that when I checked his first bone, I was trained to do this. I ran my fingers on the left side, it's right behind the ear, and the right side behind the ear. On the left side, the muscles were really locked up. I could tell the bone was stuck. And I utilized a specific technique that I was trained where with my hand, I touched over the area until I felt the muscle relax. I felt the bone unlock. And the moment the bone unlocked, I knew God was at work and God's power was flowing freely. We unlocked the potential for him to heal. And I checked him every day. Now, if there was nothing, if it was still holding its alignment, I did nothing. If it was out of alignment, I unlocked it again. And see, by doing that and allowing God's power to flow to his immune system did exactly what it was designed to do, which is kill cancer cells. His immune system made chemicals to kill cancer cells. That's called chemotherapy. But the natural type without any side effects. I like that one. But when man makes chemotherapy, they don't make it the same way, do they? So I want to share something with you. I had a patient of mine when I first started practice 15 years ago. Her name was Deborah. And Deborah came in with severe arthritis in her left knee. Nobody ever explained to her what that word meant. So she came in and she had a cane and she could barely walk. And she said, Dr. Ray, she said, I got this arthritis in my knee. So I asked her, I said, well, why is your joint inflamed? And she said, oh, it's because of arthritis. I said, no, Deborah. I said, arthritis is a Latin word. Arthro means joint and itis means inflamed. So when I asked her why her joint was inflamed, she repeated it back in another language. I said, did anybody take the time to explain to you why it's inflamed? She said, oh, yes, doc. She said, they're telling me it's because of my age. I said, your age? She said, yeah. I said, it's your left knee, right? She said, yeah. I said, well, what about the right one? She said, no, that one's fine. I said, well, how old's that one? How could it be your age if it's only one part of your body? She said, that's a good thing. I never thought of that. So I said, Deborah, come over here. Take a look. And I explained to her how God put within her brain the power to heal. And I said, the signals have to go down the spinal cord through the nerves. And I said, Deborah, the same nerves that go to your knees, listen closely, the same nerves that go to the knees happen to go to the ovaries and uterus. And I said, if those nerves are being blocked because the spine is out of position due to a fall, accident, injury, or trauma, what can happen is it could cut off the signals going to the ovaries, and that can cause ovarian cysts, uterine fibroids, menstrual problems, infertility, ovarian cancer, uterine cancer. And she says, Dr. Ray, she says, you don't have to worry about any of that. I said, why not? She said, well, they cut that out years ago. I said, cut what out? She said, the whole ovaries and uterus, they cut it out. I said, why they do that? She said, it wasn't working. I said, did anybody find out why it wasn't working? She said, they told me it was my age. I said, Deborah, you're going to end up with no parts left if you keep this up. Because the next area that nerve goes to is the hip. And she said, it's funny you mentioned that because they want to do hip replacement in a year. I said, Deborah, now listen closely. I said, Deborah, instead of cutting out the parts that are dying, we need to find out why one part of you is dying when the rest of you is still alive. And what provides life to the body parts is called life from your brain. And it flows down the spinal cord and through the nerves. And I said, Deborah, we're going to do an exam and we're going to understand where the blockages are coming from. Sure enough, we did an exam. We found the blockages on the nerves in the lower back. But listen closely. I found a blockage at C1. Which is also what was causing her blood pressure, her diabetes, her cholesterol, her stomach upset, her breathing problem, all different medications. She was on 10 different medications. And I said, Deborah, I said, the problem's right here in your neck. She said, no, you're not hearing me. It's my knee, not my neck. I said, no, I heard you fine. I said, but you see, the thing is, your knee is a symptom and we need to find the cause. And so we started unlocking that first bone, and the most amazing thing happened. Her blood sugar, her blood pressure, her cholesterol, all that's starting to get better. She's lowering her medication. Now it's about 6-7 months. Now I know it takes 3 to 6 months to heal from a knee injury. She's still got her cane. I mean, everything else is getting better, but I see she's still got this cane and she's barely walking. So one day she comes in. I said, Deborah, I said, you've been coming here for a good 7 months. I said, I know you're off all the medications. Everything's getting better. I said, but how's your knee doing? And she whispers in my ear. I'll never forget this. She whispers in my ear and she says, Dr. Ray, it's completely fine. I just want to get a ride here. They're walking around with a cane just to jump on the Able Ride bus so she can get to our office because she's doing so well, her whole life is changing. But I've been in practice now for over 15 years, and I've had patients come in excruciating pain, scheduled for surgery, knee problems, hip problems, neck problems, shoulder problems, all sorts of problems, stomach problems. And I've also had kids that I take care of. And kids are the most precious and the most innocent. And all they want is to be healthy. And you know what it's like for a mother or a father to watch their child get sick and not know what to do? See, I want to share a story with you. I had a 3-year-old girl come to my office. Her name was Sarah. Now, you see, Sarah, ever since she was born, started experiencing problems with her health. First, she had ear infections. And every time she had an infection, they gave her antibiotics for it. Within her 2nd year of life, Sarah developed asthma. She had such trouble breathing that there were nights where her mother would stay up with her every single night just to see if she would make it through the night. Can you imagine what that would be like to watch somebody you love gasping for air, not knowing if they're going to take their last breath? They put her child on Pulmicort, which is medication, and the medication made Sarah extremely hyper. So at 2 years of age, they put Sarah on anti-anxiety pills. Then she developed allergies, so they gave her medication for that. Now she's wetting her bed. So her mother comes to my office and she says, Dr. Ray, she says, please help my daughter. I've taken her everywhere. She's on 5 medications. She could barely breathe. I haven't slept one night in 2 years. She said, can you help my daughter? And I said, yes. I said, we need to find out why God's power isn't flowing through her, to her lungs, to her immune system. And I said, most likely it's going to come from where? Where's that number 1 area? C1. And the mother looked at me and said, well, how would that happen? How would a child or infant have such a misalignment in their spine? And I proceeded to explain to her, when do you think the first trauma a child or infant is exposed to in their life? According to Harvard medical research, 90% of all children will have their spine misaligned right at birth. Because when the baby's being pulled out of the birthing canal, how they get the baby out is they turn the head and then they pull on the head so hard that they cause a severe misalignment at, get this, according to the research, the most important bone is the most commonly misaligned, which is C1. Which Dr. Taubin, the medical researcher, says houses the brainstem, which controls all the brain development and the body development of a child, thus leading the body's body to start breaking down. And then we manage every part that broke down with medicine and tell the mom the child is healthy. But you see, the mom came in not knowing what to do, and I said, listen, I said, what we're going to do is we're going to do an exam, and our exam is designed to be done non-invasively and painlessly. It's a equipment that's able to measure how well the electrical flow is through the nerves, and I said, listen, I said, we're going to identify exactly where the blockage is. Now, I want to share with you Sarah's exam. I got to tell you, I love technology for this reason, because it makes understanding what's happening very easy. Now, the exam can come back 1 of 2 ways. I'm going to explain to you what they are. The top one has no color. That means when we measure the amount of nerves and life and electricity flowing through, there was no interference anywhere. On the other hand, it could come back like the bottom one, where there's colors, is where there's a blockage on the nerve, where the nerve is being choked, where life is not flowing to a body part. And the different colors indicate severity. So green is a blockage, blue is worse of a blockage, and red is the worst of the blockages. So we took an exam, and it's very rare to see black, but what happened on Sarah's exam is a black line popped up. And her mom looked at me and she said, Dr. Ray, you didn't mention the black. I said, well, let me tell you what that is when we try to measure the amount of electricity flowing through that nerve, there was barely anything getting through. And if you look at Sarah's exam, who's only a 3-year-old girl, the bottom exam is Sarah's exam. She's got a black line, which means that's the worst of all of them, right at C1, which is the most important. And her mom looked at me and she said, Dr. Ray, my daughter had been suffering for 3 years. 3 years she hadn't slept. 3 years of me not sleeping at night, worrying about her, thinking she's going to die. 3 years of putting on all those medications. Do you mean to tell me that you could have found that and corrected it and saved me 3 years of suffering? I said, yes. She said, but I don't understand. Why is it that the medical doctors didn't tell me this? And I explained to her that they were not trained on this, that medical doctors all have great intentions, but they do not go to school to learn how to check for misalignments in the spine. That's my job, and that's what I specialize in. And I explained to her that we are going to unlock that one bone and free up God's potential to heal in her. And I said, you know, we're going to do better than that. We're going to check on it again and see how she's doing. Now, the bottom exam was Sarah's first exam. The top one that's completely clear with no interference and God's power flowing was Sarah's second exam 3 months later. And when their life was flowing and God's power was flowing, what do you think happened to the asthma and the allergies and the ear infections? Gone. And her mother turned around and said, Dr. Ray, you cured Sarah of her allergies and her asthma. I said, no, I didn't cure nothing. All the credit goes to God. Because I may be the helper, but I am not the healer. Now, I explained this to her, and I want to make sure she got it. So I said, listen to me. I said, anybody that says nutrition heals or drugs heal, I said, let's take him over to a morgue. We'll pull out a dead body, put a bunch of nutrition, let's see what happens. Put a bunch of drugs in the mouth, let's see what happens. What part's healing? Anybody, any doctor who says they're a healer, we'll take them over to the morgue, we'll pull out a dead body, put our hands on there, and let's see what heals. Because you see, you may support healing, but you're not the healer. The healer's within. And it's this thing we call life. And how do we know it's in the brain? Well, cut the head, what happens to the body? It dies. But you see, it's not just in the brain, it has to get from the brain to the rest of the body, which is why you need communication channels, which are called your spinal cord and nerves. Your spinal cord's like a main power line, and the nerves are like wires. You need life to flow freely through there in order for everything to work, and your spine's the conduit. So if your spine is in position, life flows, but if it's not, it can't. Now, you see, I've been doing these exams on adults, senior citizens, and kids for the last 15 years. And I got to tell you, every single person that comes in with some element of a symptom or a medical condition, I've never seen a clear scan on. So to me, it comes quite clear that if you can get the body and the brain connected again and get life, God's power, flowing freely through it, then it's going to work the way the producer intended it to, the producer being God. If you can get the producer back into the product, which is your body, then the body, the product, works the way the producer, God, intended it to. Now, I always tell people the power that made the body heals the body, but it can be interfered with. And our job is to identify that there are physical laws that govern health. Those physical laws state that your spine has got to be in position. And through our lifetime, we're exposed to different accidents, injuries, traumas. How many of them? I don't know, a lot of them. Think about that. As a 1-year-old learns to walk, how many times do they fall on average? 25 times per day? Playground injuries, athletic sports, bicycles, backpacks, emotional stresses through the course of your life. You know, sometimes people think if they don't have stress now, then whatever they were exposed to back then just corrected itself. It doesn't work that way. See, if you went through a major trauma, maybe a loss of a loved one or a transition of a job 5-10 years ago, and during that time the muscles locked up and caused your spine to shift out of place, and nobody ever checked the spine or corrected the spine, you can still be suffering the consequences of the spine out of position, choking on the life supply, especially here at the top called the brainstem. So when somebody comes in with a problem in their knee, I check the first bone to see if there's a block up here, because a block up here cuts off life. They come in with a problem in their back, I start with the first bone. They come in with a problem in their big toe, I check the first bone. They come in with a bladder problem, where do you think I check first? First bone. What if they come in with a heart problem? Where do we check first? And so I have a friend of mine, he's an electrician, he said, why do you always check the first bone? He said, no matter what the name of the disease is. I said, Steve, you're an electrician, right? He said, yeah. I said, so when you go into somebody's house, if the problem's in the bedroom, where do you check? He says, the circuit box. I said, well, what if it's in the kitchen? He said, the circuit box. What if it's in the living room? I said, you always check the circuit box? He says, yeah, that's where all the wires come out. I said, all right. I do the same thing. Sometimes people want to make health complex. And listen, I got to tell you, I graduated top of my class. I went to over 650 seminars. I learned everything you can. I got over 50 different certificates. None of that matters, because what man knows comparatively to God is nothing. In fact, in order for man to think he knows more about how to run the body than the power that made it makes him a fool. Now, they try. Sometimes the medical doctor says, oh, you need this chemical. I say, hold on a second. If I asked you what chemical your liver needed right now in this moment, would you be able to tell me? He said, no. I said, so how can you tell me what somebody else's needs? Isn't the body change every minute? I mean, you know what I mean? You put somebody on 5 milligrams of a drug, but that's based on what? Like, if they're running more today, what should happen to their blood pressure? It should be a little higher, right? But if they're rested more, what should happen? It should be a little what? Lower. Now, does anybody call their medical doctor and say, hey, doc, you know what? Today I'm resting more. So should I drop it from 5 to 3.2 or 3.4? Where do you think I should be at that? Or they call them back and they go, hey, you know what? Today I'm running around more. So I probably take more. So you think I should up it to 7.2 or 7.8? Like, do we make adjustments like that? No. But you know who does? The power that God gave you within. See, we refer to the power in your body also as innate, meaning inborn. You have an intelligence within you. God said, put inside your body what you need in order for it to operate right. I want to repeat that. It's a very important realization. Every one of us say, okay, but then what happens is we see people on the outside reaching for drugs because they think their body doesn't know what to do. God put inside of you everything you need to operate right. So when something goes wrong, where do we look? Where should we look? Outside or inside? But most people are looking where? You got it. So we understand that we have to help that. We understand that we cause trauma to our spines. And there's none of us in this room have been not exposed to that, right? You know, sometimes I have a patient of mine said the other day, she said, well, doc, she said, I hadn't had any falls or accidents. I said, really? I said, when you learn to walk, you got it right the first time? Like you were just up and that's it? Never fell down or anything like that? She said, well, of course, Dr. Ray, I had some falls. Well, what do you think that did? I said, just because you don't remember them doesn't mean they didn't happen. So I want you to know that to me, everybody in my family comes in and gets checked. And you know, my mom, she's 75 years old. She don't have one symptom in her body. I think that's pretty incredible. I wish I could tell you she followed instruction on how to eat right and all that stuff. She don't do any of that. But she comes in every week. Every week you'll see her in my office. Every week you'll see my brother there. Every week you'll see my nephews there. My daughter, she's 16 months. You know, I checked her on her first day. What a precious gift that was. Because I didn't tell you this, but when she was first delivered, they checked her vital signs and her blood sugar was so low. It was supposed to be at 80, it was at 39. They wanted to put her into the NICU unit, pediatric intensive care, and give her all sorts of drugs and pump her up. Thank God I was there. Thank God I know what I know. Because I picked up Gabriella and I felt the first bone and it was locked on that left side. Put a little bit of pressure, I felt it unlock. And then I asked the nurse to recheck it. And she said, Dr. Ray, she said, we just checked it an hour ago. I said, just check it again. Sure enough, they checked her blood sugar, went from 39 back to 80. The nurse looked at me and she said, what did you do? I said, I just removed the interference and God did the rest. See, I think about that. I think about how many kids have that opportunity. See, because we have kids in our office that came in with autism and ADHD and been suffering for 10, 20 years, and now they're doing well. But I think about, what about all the kids that never came to the office? What about all the parents that didn't know? What do we do about those kids? Do we continue to drug them up? Do we continue to butcher them? Do we continue to mutilate them? That's what's happening out there because of a lack of knowledge. How many senior citizens? You know what we do to senior citizens in this country? We put them in nursing homes. We just drug them up until they can't speak anymore. And then we tell people they're healthy. That's a lie. Health is your body feeling stuff. Health is your body expressing life. Health is having symptoms now and then and knowing what to do about them and not trying to shut them down. See, a symptom is an alarm. It's a good thing. If you got pain in your body, I know you don't like it, but thank God you got it. How else would you know something's wrong? A symptom is like going into a house and or let's say you're driving your car and you look at the dashboard and the check engine light goes on. That's like a symptom. It's an alarm. Now, what if you took it to the mechanic and you told him the check engine light was on? He went into his shop and he came out and in his hand he got a spray can bottle, black spray paint, and he looks at where the light is and sprays over the light. And he says, can you see the light? And you say, no. He says, well, you're all done then. You're all good to go. You're driving out of there going, yep, he took care of my car. Sure did. Can't see anything anymore. And then all of a sudden another problem comes. Check brake light goes on or something. You take it back to him. You say, this one's on. He goes in his shop, comes out, sprays over that one so you can't see that neither. See, that's not the answer, is it? At some point you got to ask yourself, what's causing the problem? See, if someone has pain in their body, if you're sitting in this room and you have pain in your body, whether it's headaches or neck pain or back pain, it's important for you to get checked because I want you to understand that the pain is an alarm that that part of the body is not healing. Now, we know healing comes from God's power, but if it's cut off, then healing can't happen. So I want to give every one of you an opportunity to come into our office and do this examination. And I want to explain to you how this works. Normally, an examination like this can be quite expensive, but what we've done, what we wanted to do is we go into churches and we want to help people of faith come back and express 100% life and health so that they can be shining examples for their communities. So what we've done is we've made sure, when we spoke to Pastor Remy, we've made sure that we were going to give everybody in this room an opportunity to come in, do a consultation with me or one of my associate doctors, a full comprehensive exam, including any x-rays if necessary, and have you come back and go over your entire results for 2 hours. And as a gift to everybody in this church, in this congregation, we were going to do that at no charge as my gift to you guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Now, the other thing is we got to think about the people that aren't here, your family members. I don't want you coming in and leaving them at home. So I'm going to make sure you're able to bring them with you at no charge so that we can do a complimentary exam for you and any of your family at no charge. Now, also, let me say a couple of things. When you come into our office, we are going to look at the cause of any health concern you have. If you have pain somewhere, we're going to find out why it's not healing. Because God created you to what? Heal. So if something in your body is not healing, if there's pain, which means it's not healing, like a disc or a cushion in your knee or a neck or a back or an elbow, we're going to find out where life itself from the brain is being cut off. And most importantly, where's the first area I check? C1, you got it. If you have medical conditions, we are going to identify what's causing them, because when somebody takes medication, oftentimes they're told to take it for how long? Life. Because they don't get to the what? Cause. You got it. Now you're starting to see. And there are also some that have been given critical, terminally ill conditions. You guys know who I'm talking about. Maybe they have an autoimmune disease. Maybe they have cancer. Maybe they have a heart attack, stroke, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. We will help them. They will get answers. And so what I want you to do is I want you to have an opportunity to bring them with you for your examination that we do at no charge. Now let me tell you how it works. We're going to have these forms. And Bessie, are we handing these around? Okay. These forms are what you fill out. It's called a health and stress assessment form. You write your name, phone number, and email. You check off any concerns that you have. Now, here's the thing. There's 18,000 different medical conditions and symptoms. So if you don't see the one you have on there, we ran out of room. There's only so many we could put on the paper, okay? We put some of the common ones. Don't worry, we'll get to it. On the back of this form, I set aside certain days this week and next week for us to do this examination. So it's either Wednesday or Thursday. Those are the best days. If for whatever reason it don't work, we will accommodate you as well. No worries. But I want you to circle the time and day that works best for you and then write this week or next week. And what will happen is that Jody and Bessie, where are you guys going to be, Jody and Bessie? Right over there after the service. So after we're done right there, they will collect these and they will get you a map and directions. Our office, get this, we are so close to here. We're in Garden City. I mean, you can't ask for any place closer. So we are right here, 901 Stewart Avenue in Garden City. What they'll give you is map and directions to the office. They'll also give you some paperwork to save you time, so when you come in, you could save time, and if you're bringing other people with you, give them the paperwork as well. We have certain appointment times for this week and next, remember. Also, one of the things I want to share, which is extremely important, is and I always warn people ahead of time, when you come to our office, there's going to be a lot of happy people. Now, I got to say, I give you warnings. Most people used to go into a doctor's office and everybody's miserable. Now, I want you to understand that the reason they're healthy is they're celebrating life and God's power. And that when you build your health, it doesn't just affect you physically. It affects you mentally. It affects you emotionally, because when God's power is flowing freely, the brain chemistry gets better. When your brain chemistry is better, your moods are better, your memory is better, your energy is better, your sleep is better, your digestion is better, your moods are better, you're more prone to be able to adapt to your environment and the stresses of life. So we want to make sure that every one of you in this room becomes a shining example of health for your family, for your congregation, so we can all give the glory back to, you got it, and be a shining example for others to follow, because God knows they need it. So we need to become vessels for his message. We have to be disciples to his glory. And we have to acknowledge him in all our ways and lean on him. And so I need to make sure that you guys are as healthy as possible so that you could be the healthiest version of you for your family, for your friends, and for the people in the community. I look forward to serving every one of you. If you have any questions on your first visit, we will get to it. We will answer everything you have. And if you want to see me personally, I will be there Wednesday and Thursday. So if any of those days don't work, you may see an associate of mine, and then you'll see me on your second visit. Every one of you will see me. If you want to see me on your first, come on a Wednesday or Thursday. We have times set aside for that. And so just circle the time that works best on the form. Kids, bring your kids. Don't leave your spouses at home. Bring them with you. Bring your kids with you. Any family members that you love, you're more than welcome to bring them as well. I look forward to being a service to every one of you here. I hope you got a lot out of this. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Praise the Lord. All right, I hope you were blessed. If you were blessed, shout hallelujah. And if you appreciate the information, put your hands together. 2018 for us, according to Romans 12:2, it says we should not conform to the world, but we should be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And so, as I explained to the workers, most of you don't come for workers' meeting, I said that this year, we've started Inspiration Sundays for a long time. And we gave an opportunity to the people in the church and said, come and talk to us about something. Come and talk to us about something. But this year, we will particularly go out. We are already speaking to the mayor. We want the mayor of Hempstead to come and talk to us. We want congressmen, assemblymen, firemen, policemen, doctors, nurses. Everybody should come and talk to us. But because this is the Redeemed Christian Church of God, I have to say this. We are not endorsing any product or any service. We are providing information and a platform for us to receive information, and then we have a duty to listen and make any decision we want to make. Amen? So I don't want anybody to feel pressured or to feel that the church is saying this is what you should do. What we have done is we've given Dr. Ray and his team a platform to present what they do. And he has given an opportunity for people to come at no cost to ask questions, to do whatever tests. And if I were you, I'll take advantage of it and ask. And if you're happy, you can go ahead with them. If you're not happy about it, don't do it. Amen? But the most important thing, I think, is he gave us something to think about. God created this body. And man, doctors, nurses, engineers, we all do whatever we can to take care of situations that we know. But the best person to solve a problem is God. And that's why our body fights diseases through antibodies and things like that. But if we're out of balance, apart even from the spine, even what we eat, God created sugar cane. He created it. And there's a way the body will process natural sugar, which is different from the way the body will process processed sugar. So all these things, we really need to think about them so that we will truly be transformed and we will transform our lives. And like Dr. Ray said, our mental state is so important. Many people are so locked up with anger. And the person you are angry about has control over your life. Many people are locked up in unforgiveness. When I came to this country, this person hurt me so badly. My ex-husband, my ex-wife, if I catch her, I'll kill her. And this goes on in our minds. And as he said, it's probably the number one cause of us being not aligned the way God wants us to. So it is making sense to me. And like I said, I went to the seminar. I think Mr. Patrick has already gone for the evaluation. I haven't had the opportunity to go. But we should think about these things. We are children of God. 3 John 2 tells us that God wishes for us. This is what the plan of God is. He wishes that we are in health, that we prosper in health as our soul prospers. I wish above all things that you prosper in health, and then that your soul also prospers. God does not want you to be sick. It's not the plan of God for you. We need to look after ourselves better, and we need to seek knowledge, and I pray that God will give us wisdom.